The World Series is complete, and now all that's left is to hand out the rest of the hard way. We got Cy Youngs, we got Rookies of the Year, we got MVPs, and we know Shohei is going to win one of them. It's this week in baseball. And before we get to the awards, I think it's kind of interesting because now it's been a little bit of time since the World Series has ended. We've had some distance.
Not long enough for
from
Blue
it.
Jay fans.
Probably not long enough. I think the problem for Blue Jay fans is I remember how I felt after 2016 when the Mets lost. 15 when the Mets lost in 2015.
That's a great comparison because I think that this World Series kind of has the Blue Jay fans feeling the way the Mets did.
Right. I think the Blue Jays were closer in that series than the Mets were.
Well, they won 7 games.
Right, but in terms of, I remember after that series, it didn't really feel good until they started playing baseball the next season. It was all I was going to mind is how close you had been, and especially for a team like the Blue Jays, much like the Mets, that hadn't been there in a super long time. You're not the Dodgers. There's not that, like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to be back there next year sort of feeling. Like, you have to feel confident if you're a Blue Jays fan, but there's still the little doubt in your back of your mind. It's like, what if we don't go again for like 15, 20 years?
I spoke to Graham, who I work with today, who lives in Toronto and the Toronto area, and a big Blue Jays fan, and I could tell he was hurting. And so, he's like, yeah, it's not, no, I'm not over this yet. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it certainly isn't now. And he didn't go all the way to say until next spring. I think he'll just I don't think I want to even think about baseball until it's March.
Right. It's hard, especially right now when you know there's nothing that can do to change the feeling. You're just like, oh, I just have to sit here with the feeling of losing the World Series.
And other Blue Jays fans that I've kind of read their comments and then talking about some of the stuff that we posted, I'm like they're still pissed.
How could you not be? There was everybody ragged on the Blue Jays announcer for saying the better team lost the World Series, but there is a kernel of truth to that.
We said that, and the Blue Jays will be different in next year, and that's the thing I told my friend as well, that Bassett's I think he's gone. They re-signed Shane Bieber.
Right, he opted back in.
He opted back in and all that. So, but it won't be the same team. It won't have the same vibe.
The same way for the Mets that if they had brought back Jose Iglesias, you wouldn't have had the OMG Mets of 2024. So it will be a different team next year, and you have to hope that your organization is building the same type of organization that the Dodgers do. That you don't need a year of good vibes and sort of just everything coming together to get you there. You've built a machine that gives you a good chance of getting back there the next year.
Well, and Toronto has the disadvantage from a tax basis and for players going there. So if a player's going to go there and take the same salary he might take in the U.S. in most of the places, and maybe California's closer, it's going to cost you more in taxes to play in Canada, and that sometimes affects. Mm-hmm. It didn't stop Vlad Guerrero Jr.
It didn't stop those guys.
So
no,
I think that's a good trend for the Blue Jays, right? That this is an attractive enough place to play now. That there's some tax problem, but I want to play for.
You made the World Series this year. You're as an attractive place as any place to go and play right now.
And look, the AL East will continue to be no picnic. You don't expect the Yankees to sit there and do nothing. The Red Sox aren't going to be content with just making the playoffs.
But you could basically say that about every division.
But that division, because it has teams that spend money,
true,
I think makes it more difficult. And the Blue Jays are now one of those teams.
Right. I don't want to cast the Blue Jays as the plucky Blue Jays, fighting
the Rays
against
are the plucky team.
Right. Every other team in that division spends money. Maybe the Orioles will have something to say about that.
So and the Dodger fans had their parade and they talk about a three-peat and look, it's hard to get a back-to-back.
Right, three-peat would be incredible. Would it be fun to see? Yes, but I don't want to see it because I'd like the Mets to win next year.
And I started thinking, are the Dodgers injured, more injury-prone because they played so many more games over the past few seasons, being in the playoff every year, going to the World Series?
Maybe it hasn't.
When will that manifest itself?
It hasn't yet so far.
Injuries, but they managed to overcome. Freeman's out for a while.
Right. But that's the whole thing, though. You can't be like, oh, is it going to catch up to them when it hasn't so far? And none of these guys are particularly injury-prone guys. And again, for every team, obviously next year, if Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts go down with injuries for the season, the Los Angeles Dodgers will have a much worse chance of winning the World Series.
Right, and exactly. So I think that only because they've played so many more games will that possibly make them more injury-prone next year. That's
maybe
something I'm thinking about. So, but we will see. So let's talk about the hardware, as you say, and give it out, and we'll talk about our top picks and maybe another contender for that award.
I think that was kind of what I was hinting at when I was going into that. Like, these awards this year, they just sort of feel zipped up at this point. There's not a lot of debate I feel like you can have. Like, there's a lot of fairly obvious choices this year, it feels
Well,
like.
where do you want to start?
Well, let's start. I think in the one race, I think that would probably people say it's not obvious, and that would be the AL MVP race. And here's the thing: it is obvious.
Okay.
It's Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge had a 215 OPS plus this year. This is the greatest OPS in the American League by a man named not Aaron Judge since 1957. Cal Raleigh had an OPS plus of 169. Great season. It's the best season a catcher has had in the American League since 2012.
All right. There's an award out there called the Hank Aaron Award, which is for the best offensive player in each league. That is in addition to the MVP.
That's really cool that they're going to give Aaron Judge 2 awards.
Okay. So I was saying, well, you could possibly say that the Mariners, make the playoffs, and Cal Raleigh is the driving force, and he's the MVP, and you could give the best offensive player to Aaron Judge because, from a statistical standpoint, as you pointed out, there's not much comparison.
Right. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
60 homers for a catcher. It's you're making caveats when you're doing that.
It feels
still
like
an amazing season.
It's still an amazing season. It feels like you're trying to carve out some reason to not give it to Aaron Judge. The same way that you're going to run into that with the MVP over in the National League eventually, where you're going to have to come up with some reason to not give it to Shohei Ohtani.
My argument will only be that, when the catcher says, okay, so what if I went out and I hit 60 homers and I single-handedly carried the team on my back and we made the playoffs and we went all the way to the American League Championship Series?
Well,
would that be good?
That'd be great. Except going deeper in the playoffs it's not supposed to factor into the MVP run.
And that's the point is you're not even supposed to factor anything but the regular season. So on the basis of the regular season alone,
both of those guys powered their team to the playoffs.
Right. If neither one of those guys is on the team, neither one of those teams makes the playoffs.
Correct.
Okay, so
and Judge had the better season between the two guys.
Offensively, there is no question. But the guy was a catcher too, and I think that's getting undervalued. And I'm writing something right now just about I think we undervalue the contribution of catcher defense.
Flip side, we're undervaluing the fact that Aaron Judge had a 215 OPS plus, which hasn't been done in 70-something years.
So give him the best offensive player award for the Hank Aaron Award.
I don't understand. Like he's hitting a level that like we're acting like this is something people regularly do. We're acting like that season he had this year is something that other people in the major leagues are out there replicating. There's one guy out there putting out a performance pretty close to that, and guess what? He's winning the National League MVP.
Well, and obviously I'm trolling you a little bit
yeah.
When I'm talking about Cal Raleigh, because if you ask me for my AL MVP vote, it's going to be Aaron Judge.
It's got to be Aaron Judge. And I think you kind of run into that same problem with the NL MVP. Juan Soto had a great year. Kyle Schwarber had an unbelievable year. But you're kidding yourself if you think the NL MVP is anybody other than Shohei Ohtani.
I'm a Met fan, and even I don't think Juan Soto's in the running for the NL MVP.
Shohei had a better offensive season than both of them, and he's also a starting pitcher. Just wrap your head around that.
I didn't even know that this was Juan Soto's best season.
And it was a really good season.
Really good season. He could have another one of those seasons next
year.
And I'll be very
the next 14 years, we're going to be thrilled.
Exactly. But yeah, I feel the same way. Look, what Shohei does, I almost think he needs to play out his career, however many more years it's going to take. We need to take a breath for 5 years and then look back
and then be like, "Oh my God,
this guy really didn't play at this with these other guys, did he?
Right. Is he a human cheat code?
Was he playing against little leaguers? So yeah, I feel the same.
And I do think it's interesting, kind of talking about the Cy Young, because we talked about how the playoffs shouldn't factor into the MVP race. You have to be afraid the playoffs are going to factor into the NL Cy Young race. That all of a sudden people are going to start backwards justifying why Yamamoto should have a chance against Skeens in that.
I don't know this for a fact. I think they have to send in their votes like right away. So the idea is that they don't want you to be skewed
right.
to Skeens or
because it should be Skeens based off of the season he had, and especially when you factor in the fact that he's putting up that performance for a terrible team. Yes, Yamamoto was incredible, especially in the playoffs. That's why he won World Series MVP.
And deserved it.
But you can't factor that into the Cy Young, and it should go to Skeens.
What's interesting to me about the National League, then, between those two guys, the next guy in line might have been like Ranger Suarez or something like that. So there really wasn't, in my opinion, a third place contender that really was, a possibility.
And you kind of ran into that in the AL too. You had Skubal and Crochet, and nobody really put up a season that was close to the two.
Yeah, and you're talking about getting into like Logan Gilbert and guys like that.
Right.
Yeah, Really good.
Really, they had great years, but they were not on the level that Skubal and Crochet were.
Okay, so far we're in agreement.
Right.
And Skubal and Crochet, I was trying to find a way.
To give it to Crochet?
Yes, I was trying. I mean, the guy's a horse. He
I'd love to have him on my team.
Yeah,
but he's not the AL Cy Young.
Just what Skubal did this year with the ERA, with every
the strikeouts
of the way that he was effective, and yet he, and like you said, in the playoffs didn't go as well for him in the playoffs as it did there. But Crochet was long gone by then, so it didn't even matter. You couldn't compare.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I'd say that.
So I mean, and then
Skubal's my man too.
What about your rookie of the years? Because I feel like this was at least the AL rookie of the year was fun because it turned into a one team race between two guys.
Right, we talked about that early in the season when if we were making this vote in May or June, Jacob Wilson, who was leading the American League in hitting, or right near Aaron Judge at the top of the league in hitting, because I think Judge started out hitting like 400.
Right, it was crazy.
There wasn't anybody ahead of him. And playing shortstop.
Had a good solid season, but then
good solid.
Right. But then, unfortunately for him, Nick Kurtz emerged.
Right. And this guy came out of college, highly regarded. Had hit some home runs in the year before. I think in 20-something home runs. But this year he took it literally to another level. In that, I think this is a guy who could hit 50 home runs, right, and in that ballpark.
And he could and he could really be an anchor like that. That A's team has a explosive young lineup that I think people don't realize how good it is. And unfortunately for them, they're just going to start stuck being a crappy team until they can get out of that barn box and attract any pitcher to come play for them.
I think that's a good point because it's kind of like having a pitching in Colorado, pitching in Sacramento.
It's
like,
worse.
Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to pitch there. Everybody wants to hit there.
Everybody wants to hit there. No pitcher wants to go and pitch there. So the idea you're going to be able to sign any guys to come there this offseason, I can't imagine who would want to do that.
And they have their dugouts out in center field because it's a minor league ballpark. So if you get taken out of the game, you got to walk all the way across the field.
I know Severino hated playing there last year.
It's drive the guys crazy because it feels rinky-dink.
It does.
Yeah. But I would pick Kurtz over Jacob Wilson. Again, there wasn't really a bona fide third candidate that I...
Right. There's a lot of guys you could put into that third spot, but we always kind of knew it was a two-horse race.
I think so, too. How about in the National League?
This, I think, is an interesting one because Drake Baldwin kind of went under the radar with the season that he had for the Braves because they kind of just were bad all season. I don't think people realized how good he was stepping in.
And those Braves, by the way, hiring Walt Weiss as manager now, but they go through catchers they get all the.
They got Sean Murphy.
They had Darno, and they went and they got Sean Murphy, and they had Darno as a backup. And then all of a sudden, Drake Baldwin comes out of nowhere and is, as you're going to suggest, the rookie of the year in the National League under the radar.
I do think you have to give a lot of credit over to Cade Horton, though. He got forced into a really tough position with the Cubs, especially once Justin Steele went down. And he got forced into being their de facto number one.
And he answered the call.
Even into the playoffs. He did everything he could for them. So I think even if he doesn't win the rookie of the year, the Cubs have to be excited about that. Though I think there is concern when they've already talked about how they're not going to re-sign Imamaga.
Oh, they let him go.
They let him go, right? And apparently they're not about to go and spend a bunch of money to bring him back. So I'm like, okay, that's a team that clearly had pitching issues.
They'll get Steele back.
Right. But you still had pitching issues going into the postseason where you felt like you didn't have enough, and now you're not going to pursue top-end relievers or a top-end starter. Like, okay, well, what are you going to do then?
Did you consider at all Jacob Mizorowski?
He didn't pitch enough.
Yeah, I kind of
in the regular season.
Remember, this guy started the All-Star game.
Well, you're going to run into the National League Rookie of the Year race next year is going to probably be insane. Because there's going to be so many guys that are going to be eligible. Next year's Rookie of the Race is going to be one of the most hyped Rookie of the Year races because guys like Nolan McLean, Shreyas Savage are all going to be eligible because they came up so late.
They're still rookies.
They're still going to be rookies. So I think you're going to have a crazy Rookie of the Year run next year.
Yeah, but I guess Drake Baldwin is certainly my guy in the National League.
Do you like Reliever of the Year as an award? It feels...
Well, there's always been some sort of back when I was a kid, there was the Fireman of the Year.
It's
the fireman.
It's a true consolation prize of an award.
I think we need to value what relief pitchers do because it's different than what starting pitchers do. So I think they should be acknowledged, and I am in favor of that. And I think the way you evaluate it is you would never have a guy who was a stalwart seventh-inning pitcher who gave up nothing all year long and basically was almost unhittable if he didn't end up finishing games at some point. You wouldn't consider that player for the best relief pitcher, but for a single season,
He
that
could
be
be.
the case.
Mhm.
So we basically turn it over to the guys that finish games, and there's a reason for that.
Right. When we look at the NL Relief of the Year, we're looking between guys like Diaz and Suarez and Hader and Munoz, the best closers in baseball because they're pitching the highest leverage situations.
And that's an important factor because the way we evaluate saves now is not the way that we used to. Like having 40 saves or 50 saves is not as important as being used in the situation where the highest leverage is needed.
Right.
And
If I
that
need
might be the seventh inning,
could be the eighth inning. Yeah.
But so I think that we can score and look at the reliever's performance differently than we could when we only looked at it in the
When we
basis
only
of
looked
how
at who
many
got the
saves.
most saves in a given season.
Exactly. So yeah, and it was a really close race for me this year.
Because Diaz had a wonderful season, but I think it goes to Suarez. Actually.
I would pick Diaz.
I think Suarez just because and maybe this is because I'm a Met fan and I can remember the not good Diaz
You always remember the
performances.
saves your guys blow.
Right, exactly. And I don't remember any of the saves that Suarez didn't blow.
Did not blow very many. By
No,
the way,
I just remember the ones he did.
But watching Diaz pitch, and I think it's the same to a certain degree with Suarez when he doesn't really have his stuff.
Oh, it is an
It's
adventure.
a nightmare. Like if you're watching your end of game pitcher and he oh no, he can't throw a strike. Oh no.
Diaz needs his emotional support base runners.
And the ball's kind of going all over the place, and he might almost hit the guy.
Right, he might hit him. He's got the bases loaded. There's no out, and then he strikes out 3 guys in a row.
Exactly. So it's the as you like to say the Edwin Diaz experience.
Yeah, I think I would give it over to Munoz in the AL just because I felt like he was so consistent all year for the Mariners, and the fact that back of the bullpen was so locked down for them is part of the reason why they ended up winning that division.
I think that's a bit of a recency bias.
Right.
In your mind, because Josh Hader had an amazing season, and he ended up being both hurt a little bit, and the Astros didn't make the playoffs, so you didn't get to see. You haven't seen the guy pitch. It seems like forever.
Right, you forget how good he was.
So yeah, he's and he hasn't. I don't know if he's won any of those awards because he's he's had other guys
gets
in
hurt.
the league, that have always kind of had better seasons. So I would pick him over Munoz as reliever of the year, and that's gonna I think change next year. It's being underwritten differently, and then the criteria is going to change a little bit.
Make it a little more open.
Make it a little bit more open, all that. So they have obviously we have managers of the year. Well, let's finish on something that they still like to do in baseball, and that's the comeback player of the year. And this is a really weird
I don't like this award.
Because it's too all encompassing. Because are we talking about a guy that was injured that came back because he had been injured, or a guy who had a crappy year the year before and played better this year?
Crappy year into good year, I don't like. That's why I don't like Javi Baez for comeback player of the year, because all he's coming back is from being bad.
But what a comeback!
It was an unbelievable comeback.
I mean, the guy looked lost for years out there, and not only did he play center field, he played shortstop as well, and both of them equally effectively defensively. And again, we tend to underrate the
defensive versatility there.
How the defensive makes it.
I have a hard time giving it to a guy like DeGrom because it wasn't like DeGrom was coming off of an injury this year. He came off of it last year, and he just didn't pitch that much.
Yeah, so you can't pick a comeback player.
It's hard for. I don't like comeback player of the year because it's like if I'm going to give it to an NL guy, I kind of want to give it to Ronald Acuna Jr.
Well, I may go back to the AL. So I would pick maybe George Springer.
Right.
Because he had a miserable year in 2020-24, but it wasn't because he was injured or anything like that. He just sucked.
Right. I feel like you have to be coming back from something that isn't your own ineptitude.
Yeah. Like would Pete Alonso be a National League comeback player of the year? No.
I hope not.
No, I hope not. I hope someone was better. So who do you have in the National League?
Acuna. He came back off a major injury, basically didn't miss a beat, and you're just like, oh, great, he's going to steal 100 bases next season.
The other guy was Corbin Carroll for me because, again, he had such a terrible year last year after having such a great year the year before, and I think that was his rookie year in 23.
Right, he had a second-year slump. I mean, it was still a solid season, but you expected more out of him, and then he had a great year this year.
So I think he's, a guy that you can also expect to have a huge year next year because I think whatever the problem he has, he figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, and then how about your managers of the year? You can't pick Carlos Mendoza.
I wasn't going to. I think it's an interesting one because
Brian Snitker.
You're looking at there's two names that kind of pop up to me in the NL, and I think it's interesting because you could really make an argument for either one of these guys. And they're both from the NL Central. You got Terry Francona and you have Pat Murphy. And to me, the managing job that Murphy did was more impressive than the managing job that Francona did, because Francona's managing job the reason it was successful was other teams got in their own way, and maybe he managed the Reds to
Like
not
the
get,
Mets?
like the Mets, right? Whereas Murphy, 2 years in a row when it's
But he won it last year.
right, but again,
How do you win Manager of the Year 2 years in a row? Hold on a second here.
because everybody says, oh, you only won the division last year as part of a fluke. There's no way you're going to do it a second time, and then they do it again and have the best record in the National League. That's why he should get it, because nobody believed it. They're like, oh, you're not going to do it the first time, and then he did. Well, there's no way you're going to do it a second time, and then he does it a second time.
You know, I'm a fan of Tito, and Francona has, you know, I when they brought him in, I thought they're going to be better simply because he's there. Well, that kind of happened.
Right.
You know, they
next year could actually be the year in which he does a better managing job, because if they take a step forward, it's just like backing into the final wild card slot and then getting bounced 2-0 from the playoffs. It's like, I mean, granted, the Brewers had as an equally disastrous trip in the playoffs, so I can't really hold that against the Reds if I'm not going to hold it against the Brewers. But
and two managers that don't get consideration but should, and one of them in particular, well, I'd start with the manager of the world champion Dodgers. You know, Dave Roberts had to manage a completely different team this year than he had last year, because this year he had the starters to use and he
not the
didn't have
relievers.
the bullpen, and he managed it through. He's never going to get that kind of accolade.
His consolation prize is going to be a World Series title and eventual Hall of Fame nod.
Yeah. I think we know he's a great manager,
right?
But you don't name him manager of the year when he manages the team with the best players and that spends the most money,
right?
So, and how about Rob Thompson? I mean, you know, the Phillies, if you look at that team every year, you think, man, they've got some pieces, and they did have a lot of good pieces this year. And there was a couple of times where Rob Thompson was a little shaky. They thought,
right?
You know, at one point they thought, oh, is it? But you know, the team kind of put it together at the end of the season. And just because you're supposed to end your voting after the regular season, you're not supposed to count the fact that the Phillies didn't look very good in the playoffs against the Dodgers, which kind of makes you mentally go, yeah, it's not him.
Mm-hmm. I think the AL is interesting because I think a lot of people are going to want to give it to Dan Wilson, but I think it should go to John Schneider. Only because, I mean, you could make an argument for the Cleveland Guardians manager, which is
Stephen Vogt.
Stephen Vogt, right? Because they made such an unbelievable comeback to just make the playoffs.
That's a good point.
I think he should at least get a mention. But it's like, to me, John Schneider, they were a team that was kind of middle of the pack through about.
They finished last in 2024 in the division.
Right, and then they bounced back this year, and from about June onwards, they're the best team in baseball. They play great. Every button he pushes seems to work. It kind of just feels like it should be him. But if you give it to Dan Wilson, I don't think anybody's going to be upset.
And I think Blue Jay fans before the season would go, John Schneider, manager of the year. He's never shown us that. We never. They
might have been wanting to get rid of him
did.
Right.
The Blue Jay fans want to get, and Dan Wilson didn't quite get to that stage because he's the newer manager.
Right.
He replaced Scott Service last year. I just think if I'm a Mariners fan, I would like it to acknowledge the fact that, well, we didn't win, but
so we should get something.
We should get something. Yeah, exactly. So I kind of think that he should be considered. So let's see. We've had Gold Glove awards, and we don't like to talk too much about them on this podcast. So I thought we would limit it just to talking about guys that have won more than one.
Right. There's a couple guys that are. I think guys like Stephen Kwan and Max Fried, Ian Happ, they all won their 4th award. I think it's interesting.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but I also think it's interesting that that's the highest number that anybody has on the current list. I don't think you're going to see guys getting 7, 10 Gold Gloves anymore like they used to, because you're just not going to get it handed to them. You're not going to get into a point where you win it by default and some other guy has to beat you out for it.
I think Hall of Famer Jim Cott, I don't know, he's got some ridiculous number of Gold Gloves as a pitcher, and I think he won most of those consecutively because he was the incumbent.
Right, exactly. Like, you know who that could happen to? That could happen to Patrick Bailey, where he's got such a reputation as a good defensive catcher that he just sort of will get it, especially as they take away pitch framing. Though that's one of the things he's best at.
He's really good at that, so I think that it's going to be evaluated differently. I don't know if that's going to happen next year necessarily entirely, because it's a challenge system next year. So there still will be
some framing
next year because they still have to challenge it.
And I do want to give a shout out that I think people don't realize this. Fernando Tatis Jr. just won his 2nd Gold Glove in right field. What a crazy switch! They had him at shortstop in San Diego. They move him into right field. He immediately becomes a Gold Glove defensive outfielder.
And that's the kind of thing where he could be the Gold Glove right fielder for years because his arm is ridiculous. He's still got the great running speed.
He's a great player.
He's a great player. So there's no. It's not the most debilitating position on the field.
Right.
Whereas you talk about Patrick Bailey being a catcher, he's as likely to be injured.
Or
as he
even
is to
Bobby
win
Witt
another
Jr.,
one.
who's won 2 at shortstop. How many is he going to be able to win defensively at shortstop with before? I mean, yeah, he's young, but that guy has to do so much for that team.
Yeah, as I mentioned in our last podcast, that was the thing for Mookie Betts going, playing shortstop is so hard. It's so difficult. So I think about that indifferently. Like, yeah, that's a position that sort of should be overweighted when it comes to, you know,
exactly. Winning Gold Gloves there means something.
But Weiler Abreu of the Red Sox won his second, and I don't think I'd got that one.
No.
Semien, who
got his second.
And Cabrian Hayes, who was traded, obviously, from the Pirates to the Reds in the season. And it's a good thing he can feel because he never became the hitter. They
really hope
the
he would
Pirates
become.
And so far the Reds are hoping for, and that really is not. Is it good enough to have a great glove at third base and to hit 230?
Not anymore.
I don't know if I'd want to have my third baseman doing that. So yeah, I think those are your Gold Glove awards, and I think that's basically we've got. We've got contemporary era for the Hall of Fame that
they're starting to look. You're right.
So they've chosen the guys, the 8 guys.
Kenny Lofton still left off the list.
No, he's not there. But Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are, and somebody was making the argument. I think it was Eno Saris today. I'm not sure who made the point that I think they're doing this on purpose. It wasn't Eno, but to basically bury those guys for good because they've got other guys on there that are more popular, and there's still such a groundswell against any PED.
Right, you put them in the
users.
contemporary.
You put them in this, and like, oh, they didn't get enough to qualify, and then they're off the ballot for a while, and they're going to kind of do this with, they'll do it again with A-Rod,
right? Just
all these guys and try to cycle these guys through, get them because you have to have a certain amount of votes in order to be put on or you can't be on the ballot for a bunch of years. So I think that these guys are on there. Yes, we think we think that they should be in there, but there's a lot of good names on that ballot.
It's gonna be quite a race.
We'll
probably talk more about that. Yeah,
definitely. And then obviously you've got the ballots go out in December for the actual Hall of Fame for 2026.
And that class will be announced on January 20th.
Yes, in January. So we will cover that as well. So you look, it's wintertime. It's dark out. We'll keep talking about baseball.
The real fun meetings are coming up in about a month, starting on December 7th. That were the winter meetings in Orlando, and that's what
we have the owners' meetings this month.
Right, nothing crazy happens at those two. Usually,
they don't let you know what's going on.
No.
These are the owners' meetings.
And then you get the GM meetings, but that winter meetings in Orlando, that's when you start seeing the real movement on free agents, and some of the stuff is going to start going on, and that'll be real fun this winter to get some baseball news.
Somebody asked me today, so what's your favorite off season? Like, what are you looking for in the off season and in the most exciting story? I'm like, I don't know.
Pitchers and catchers reporting.
I'm looking forward to that. Less than 100 days.